What is up, people? Welcome back. It's time to learn the final model of macroeconomics. Ready, set, smash that like button, and let's go. Alright, so in the previous video, we discussed exchange rates, and I introduced the concept of the foreign exchange market, which refers to a global electronic market in which currencies are bought and sold. Now we're going to graph it, so let's get right to it. Okay, this is it, our last model of macro, the foreign exchange model. And would you look at that, it's just another version of the supply and demand model. Nothing to worry about, you got this. Alright, so now I have two foreign exchange models on the screen, and the reason is to point out how we label them. On the left is the market for the US dollar, and on the right is the market for the euro. As usual, the vertical axis is the price, which is the exchange rate. We can abbreviate that XR, but unlike the other models, we also need a little bit more information, and it means we need to be super careful when it comes to labeling this one. The exchange rate is the price of one currency in terms of the other. So if we're talking about the market for the dollar, the price of a dollar is expressed as euros per dollars. In other words, how many euros does it take to buy a dollar? If you're ever panicking when it comes to labeling, I like to remember that whatever currency your model is for is labeled on the bottom of the model on the x-axis, and it's also on the bottom of the ratio you make on the y-axis. That trick helps me, might help you too. Our other model is for euros, which is why we label the price of euros as USD per euros. Now we turn our attention to the curves, and we see a very familiar sight, an upward sloping supply curve and a downward sloping demand curve. At the intersection of the two curves, we see our current exchange rate. As far as why each curve slopes the way it does, it's the same old story as usual. The supply curve is upward sloping, showing a positive relationship between the value of the currency and the quantity supplied. As usual, sellers like high prices. The demand curve is downward sloping, showing a negative or inverse relationship between the value of the currency and the quantity demanded. In the least surprising news ever, buyers like low prices, even when it comes to buying currency. The really important question, though, is why do people supply and demand a currency? In the next video, we're going to go over things that shift both of those curves. But if you can really internalize the reason why we supply and demand currencies, you won't need to worry about memorizing those determinants at all, because this really tells you everything you need to know. People demand a currency so that they can buy goods, services, or financial assets from another country. The key assumption of the foreign exchange market is that goods, services, and assets must be paid for in the currency of the country from which they originate. Listen, I know this isn't literally true. If you bought a PS5, you almost certainly bought it using dollars, not yen. When I bought my Toyota, I used dollars, not yen. But if you buy something that was made in another country, at some point those dollars that you used are going to have to be converted to the currency of that country, because ultimately people want to be paid in the currency of the country that they're in. So I'll say it again, people demand a currency so they can buy goods, services, or financial assets from another country. But what about supply? An important thing to point out about the supply of a currency is that this is totally different than the money supply that we learned about back in Unit 4, that included all cash and bank deposits. The supply of currency on the foreign exchange market only includes those dollars that are currently available to be bought on the foreign exchange market. That $5 in your pocket, not part of that supply, since nobody could buy that $5 right now in exchange for euros or yuan or pounds or whatever. Now, people supply a currency so that they can buy a foreign currency. Okay, stay with me. I know that might sound weird. Let's say that Americans want to buy a bunch of French wine. To buy that French wine, they need to convert their dollars to euros. The American supplies some of his or her dollars to the foreign exchange market because he's demanding euros. We could say that he's selling dollars and buying euros on the foreign exchange market. That's really the pivotal concept of this entire model. We demand foreign currency to buy stuff from that country, and we supply our domestic currency when we demand a foreign currency. That's basically it. Not too bad, huh? We can also acknowledge our same disequilibrium story that we've told on basically every supply and demand model in this class. Disequilibrium occurs when quantity supplied is greater or less than quantity demanded. If the price is too high, quantity supplied will be greater than quantity demanded, creating a surplus of the currency. Market forces will push the price down and the exchange rate toward equilibrium. If the price is too low, quantity demanded will be greater than quantity supplied, creating a shortage. This will lead to higher prices and again push the exchange rate towards equilibrium. Alright, so next up we'll talk about changes and shifts of the foreign exchange market, so be sure to stick around for that. And until next time, this has been a LaMoney production. Thanks again for watching. Please hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to check out the description to get answers to these practice questions, as well as the great study aids I've made for you, and I will see you in the next video.